of the Cartoonist Consultant Podcast. I'm your host, Zoe Zuzu Cartoon Sug, and the other day I was actually sitting here thinking about what all I could get out before I go to Emerald City Comic Con in 3 weeks and how I'm going to market the Cartoonist Consultant. And I was sitting there thinking about how much I could afford and how many business cards I can print and whether or not they're going to be colored or double-sided or what exactly. And it occurred to me that I end up leaning into a lot of my weaknesses when I market, and there's a big difference between accepting something as it is and playing something up as a strength. I work in tech, so the saying, it's not a bug, it's a feature, comes up fairly often. Primarily, I develop a lot of WordPress websites, so when you're trying to combine different third party open source programs, there's all sorts of little bugs that you run into that you end up kind of hiding or coding out or just playing with. And I really like the adage, it's not a bug, it's a feature, because there's a lot of ways that you can lean into something that your product or that your website is missing and really turn it into something that's actually pretty cool. For instance, WordPress stores are sort of hard to code, and there's a bunch of different features in there that you have to pay for, and it's kind of just a big pain in the butt. So there's a lot of people that want to build a checkout system that'll, automatically feed somebody into a different process, like after they check out. It'll either turn into a contact form or they want to automatically capture information, or, there's just a whole bunch of things that people want their stores to do automatically that really doesn't work that way, or you have to pay a developer or buy a pretty expensive plugin in order to make it work that way. But a really common thing that I'll do is just route their customer to a landing page after they've checked out where they can give them their contact information, but in exchange, they actually get a coupon to come back next time. So what you're getting is their information, but they're also motivated to come back because you've thanked them for their business, you've sort of given them some payoff for giving you their business, and you're also kind of giving them some incentive to come back. So it's an extra feature that got added in that we had room for because in the first place, the shop wouldn't do exactly what the customer wanted it to do. So, to go back to thinking about how I was branding Cartoonist Consultant, one of the things that I was thinking about is that I might not have the money to actually do a full color double sided business card. But the other thing is, I don't necessarily know that I need to. You know, all you really need on a business card is maybe some social media stuff, which is going to be Zuzu cartoons. And at that point, since it's a secondary project, really all I need is the name of the podcast, the website of the podcast, and maybe one or two links to places that you can listen to it, which means that I might have a whole other blank side of my business card to do whatever I want with. Now, I might be able to allocate funds from another project into this project, and maybe I can do a double-sided business card for two different things. But I think what I'm more likely to do is just leave it blank, because what we can do then is, carry on to Sharpie, and the back of that business card can be a phone number, it can be a website that I referenced when I was talking to somebody in conversation, it can be my social media account if they don't really want to take two business cards and get my Zuzu Cartoons information. It can be my booth number. When I'm boothing at Dink Denver, I can write what number I'm at or what floor I'm at, and people can come back and find me super easily if we have a good conversation and they need to go. I feel like artists by nature are just, perfectionists, right? We will sit there and we'll work with a piece for hours or days at a time until it's absolutely perfect. And because of that, we really kind of get hung up when something in our brand isn't perfect. Like if a project doesn't finish on time, or if you don't have the right supplies for the convention that you're going to, or you don't have the booth setup that you want to have, a lot of people get discouraged really easily, I feel like, and it's very easy to just say, I'm done, to not go to that show or to cancel that project. And while we will talk about actually when to know if a project's dead and when to cancel something, the majority of the time, I think people will convince themselves out of doing something because it's not perfect. And, it's so rare that one little detail that you notice, and you will 100% notice this every time because it's your art, gosh dang it. But the amount of times that people will actually pay attention to whatever little detail is holding you up, really, I mean, it's so minor, right? Like, it's so not necessary to get hung up over something like that. But you can really lean into those imperfections and, actually make them something that's valuable to your brand. So to go back to a blank sided business card, Having a unique and handwritten other side of your business card just means that it's more personalized and somebody's going to remember your conversation that much better. I think if you're really going to play up a quote unquote bug, it's really all about your intentions. When I was reading up on this adage, it's not a bug, it's a feature, I actually found a Wired article that talks about the subjectivity of bugs, and how a good chunk of the things that users report to the developers are actually items in the program that were intended by the developer, to actually be there. And it was just so interesting to me that even in something as hardwired as coding, where you know your procedure, you know the goal of the software, it's all mathematically pre-coordinated. Even in something that seems so restrictive, we still get subjectivity even just within that. It all reminded me of the YouTube series Strip Search, which is actually a really cool reality TV show put on by the guys that do Penny Arcade. It's a whole YouTube series on finding the best webcomic artist, and it's a super fun time. I definitely recommend going and looking it up. But there was a challenge in there where somebody got critiqued on Twitter, and her response was just absolutely brilliant. What she ended up doing was responding to this person and saying, "Oh, I'm glad that you caught that. Wait till you see what I do next." Now, here's the brilliant thing: whether she really had something planned or not, what she's doing there is acknowledging and thanking her reader, and then not really letting on that there may or may not be a mistake. And this gives her time, this buys her time to fix it if it is a mistake and make everything look intentional. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. We're really leaning into something that you might have not planned on, or something that you may have very well made a mistake on, can actually elevate your brand or your storytelling in that case, that much more. Honestly, cartoonists already do this. A little while ago, I saw an amazing post on Instagram from Bad Turquoise. That's Turquoise. They had just a really nice little quiet scene where their two OCs are sharing a cigarette, and it's a pretty difficult pose. I mean, there's a bunch of foreshortening in it. It's sort of from like a kind of top down, like 3/4 angle, and the color balance is lovely. The quality of the sketch is lovely. It's just great, great piece. And the thing is, the artist for this post wrote that the perspective was quote unquote whack, and also wrote, "Please don't look too closely at this. I just wanted to stop being lazy and draw a scene." So the thing is, now that they've pointed this out, I did what everybody has to do, and I sat there scrutinizing the piece and, looking for mistakes. So, I kind of sat there for a few minutes and really kind of scanned the piece and eventually found a few things. But here's the thing: this user, Bad Turquoise, has great control of their style. So, yeah, sure, I ended up kind of staring at the thing for a while, and eventually I noticed that one of the character's legs didn't quite line up with the stool that he's sitting on, and, yeah, the back of the couch doesn't quite look realistic. But the thing is, it looks good. It looks naturalistic. The couch absolutely fits in with the rest of the page because the back of it has this perfectly controlled curve that ends up cutting off this kind of awkward corner where the perspective becomes an issue. And yeah, the character that's not quite sitting on that stool right, the stool just looks askance, and that fits the mood of the scene because the character is sitting there and kind of leaning over and caring for his partner. He's clearly not in the best posture, but he's also not really paying attention to himself. So all of this fits. The style just sort of compensates in our eyes automatically, and everything looks correct. So if that user hadn't pointed out anything about that perspective, I wouldn't have noticed jack shit. And I mean, that's the thing that all cartoonists do, right? We all have a style, and at some point we were all in 6th grade and we couldn't figure out how to draw a profile, and we decided that our style was just to never draw a profile on our characters ever. And we all drove our art teachers nuts because we absolutely refused to learn how to gradient shade, and our style only used block shading. And, there's so many creators out there who just don't do something or lean into a certain aspect of something because it's, a part of how they draw. And whether or not it's good or bad, whether or not it's something they've chosen to do or something that they can't do, if your style compensates for it and it looks correct, more power to you. You can pursue that and it'll look good, and I guarantee you almost no one will notice. And the thing is, it's not just cartoonists. That's the field that I am obviously most familiar with, but there's so many creators out there who just don't write flowery descriptions because their monsters are, quote unquote, vague and terrifying, and so they just don't write any descriptors. I mean, look at Lovecraft for crying out loud. He built an entire empire on that shit. There's fine artists who refuse to work in color because they think they can get better value from black and white. You already do this. We all do this as artists. You just have to pull this theory into your business. And I mean, I do think that's sort of a problem for artists because we don't really have a reputation for being good at business, right? So it intimidates us. We think everything has to be absolutely perfect and we think that we have to present absolutely perfectly, and that's just not how humans are, and it's certainly not how we are. We're all scattered, hippy dippy, artsy fartsy creators. So at some point, I mean, I think I just had to let go of that idea and really play into business as an art form. And that's really when a lot of that started working for me? So never be scared that your stuff isn't perfect. All right, that one's a bit shorter for this week. I'm going to go ahead and climb off my soapbox now. This has been the Cartoonist Consultant Podcast, and thank you for listening.